Good evening. Bidding wars are standard practice when buying a home, but they're becoming more common for rentals too. A lack of available properties is driving monthly rents up and forcing tenants to bid over the asking price to secure somewhere to live. Brandon Cook has this report.
Having a house should be treated as a human right, not as something we have to bid for or beg for.
It's not just from like cowboy landlords, it's from leasing agents, and it's all over the place. And it's just penny pinching for the sake of it.
Finding a home to rent is getting harder and more expensive.
Once you get yourself in front of a landlord or a letting agent, you feel desperate to be like, please just let me get a flat, we've got to live somewhere.
Demand for rented accommodation is 2.5 times higher in Scotland than the rest of the UK. Nearly 80% of the country's one-bedroom flats are let out within the first month, and in some cities, half the properties are gone within a week.
Even securing a viewing for a flat, one tenant said that she was in a queue of about 70 people.
Well, I've been in the industry for over 30 years and I have not seen the levels of demand as it is at the moment.
Letting agents say they've never been busier, but with fewer rentals coming on the market in the first place, the pool of available homes is falling fast.
Demand is well outstripping supply. Many of them are planning to exit the sector. They're just feeling they no longer want to be a landlord here in Scotland.
With a shortage of properties and rising demand, some prospective tenants are being asked to bid against each other and pay more than the nearest competitor to secure the house or flat.
I was looking for a flat like it was my full-time job. Like, as soon as the flat goes up, within a week it's gone, or all the viewing slots are booked up.
Jess found it difficult enough just to get in front of a landlord when searching for a new home late last year. After finally arranging a viewing, she turned up to find she wasn't the only one being considered.
We were ushered around the flat very quickly, just in and out of the rooms very fast, and then we were all told to gather outside the front of the flat in a semicircle around the landlords. He just said, what do we do now? What do you want to do? Everyone was looking at each other a lot. You could tell we were all sort of taken aback by it and a little bit uncomfortable. There were some people there who were clearly in like a desperate situation and really needed a place to live, and they started offering, I'll transfer you £500 right now, and showing them their banking on his phone, and someone else chipping in and saying, no, I'll transfer you 700. It was a little bit chaotic.
You see the moods in the room at the time was desperate amongst the other people that were there, but how were you feeling?
I said out loud, this is so uncomfortable. I just walked away. I could tell there were people there that they needed a place to live. And then as I walked off, I actually heard behind me, it was sort of like a celebration that someone had gone. The landlord was like, oh, one down.
Desperate for a new home, some have little option but to pay over the advertised cost.
It's incredibly frustrating, but there wasn't any other solution at the time.
Jay moved into this two-bedroom flat in Aberdeen last year. He shares the small space with a flatmate.
So this is where I work from home.
That's for the new job then, in here?
It is indeed for the new job.
A lot of time in here?
Yeah, a lot of time.
During the application process, he was asked to increase the amount he would pay in monthly rent or risk losing the place altogether.
When I thought I'd secured the flat for the price it was listed for, they then said that someone else had bid on it, and I was going, but wouldn't tell me how much they had bid, and so it said that I need to increase my offer. I'm not even particularly sure that that other person exists.
So do you feel as if you were dragged into a bidding war then?
Yeah, and forced into one as well, because I was, I'd already given my notice from my previous place, but also I'd already, considered moving here and, how that was going to affect where I was going to work and things like that.
Do you feel as if, especially with the energy prices going up and food prices going up as well, that maybe that £50 that you were forced to bid extra on this property, that could have probably helped you now?
Well, it made me have to reevaluate how much spending money I had for other things in the rest of the month. I have to move, essentially that £50 coming out of my food bill, forcing people to bid on their livelihood. You need it. It's just not acceptable.
But the body representing Scottish landlords say they're not aware of members starting bidding wars. They claim tenants are offering over the odds.
What I'm hearing from landlords is that they're saying they're inundated with applications from tenants wanting to rent their flat or their house. And many of those tenants are coming to those landlords saying, how much more can I pay to be able to secure this property?
Can you categorically rule out that bidding wars don't happen within Scotland?
I can't rule that out because I don't know exactly, obviously, what every landlord or every letting agent in Scotland actually does. If you were to ask me, do you think that might become the norm in the future? I would say yes, I do think that could be the consequence of a lack of supply and a huge demand on the sector in the future. That's not good news for anybody, and we need to tackle that problem now.
But the heated market isn't just affecting those looking for a new home. Those already in tenancies are feeling the pressure too.
We're really hearing of a kind of crisis situation. Nationally, we've seen rents rise by 8%, and that's just an average. Within Glasgow, it's 16%. So a lot of the time, tenants are trapped in unsuitable housing because they can't afford to move on anywhere, or they're kind of priced out of their communities and having to move somewhere that's only even marginally cheaper.
Priced out, that's how Gillian feels. After 2 years, she feels she has no choice but to leave her Glasgow neighbourhood after her landlord upped her rent by 23%.
Yeah, so the 23% in itself isn't a huge amount more, but given the fact that everything else is going up, we're already trying to take on more shifts and find more money to cover our other costs, and it's just going to be a bit of a stretch with everything considered.
What reason were you given for the price going up?
The reason that we were given for our rent going up was that our landlord has so many properties that he's struggling to manage them. He's going to give them to a letting agent, and the letting agent wants to increase our rent by 80%. So by his logic, we're getting a bargain by only going up by 23%. So it's not tied to the fact that the cost of having that flat is going up. It's because everybody else is charging more, so he can justify charging more.
This is a neighbourhood you love, a neighbourhood you want to live in. It must be a shame to leave it.
It's really sad that we're facing the prospect of being forced out of not just where we live, but our community. We've got friends who live there. I've lived there for 7 years. I run a business in the area. We really feel that we're part of the community, and it feels very disempowering and frustrating that we're being forced out of that because somebody wants to make more money.
But with demand far outstripping supply, the average monthly rent has increased by 8.5% in the past year, and those looking for properties need to move fast.
A year ago, the time to let figures, which is from when a property is placed in the market and a tenancy being secured, were in the region of about 35 to 40 days. That's decreased by over 45% now, and we're into the region of kind of 20 days on average. Obviously, you have properties, maybe the 3 or 4 beds, which are in highest demand. You're turning them around within 10 to 14 days.
Across the country, it's an increasingly similar situation. In Dundee, 80% of properties are gone within a month, rising to more than 90% in Glasgow. Both South Lanarkshire and Renfrewshire are experiencing similar demand, while at the moment, all one-bed flats in West Lothian are snapped up within the month. But what's causing all of this? And could the market get even worse?
One thing that we are strongly hearing from landlords is that there's a fear that they have at the moment of new legislation that the Scottish Government's introducing through the Scottish Parliament that's effectively going to make them more wary about renting in the future.
There are several measures the Scottish Government are looking to implement to enhance tenants' rights by 2025, including offering more protections against evictions, introducing rent controls, and establishing a new regulator to monitor standards in the private rented sector.
There are landlords out there who are committed to providing good quality accommodation for a fair rent, but sadly there are others who will take any opportunity to hike the rent as much as they possibly can. What I want landlords to understand is that responsible landlords who are committed to behaving fairly and respecting their tenants' well-being and welfare have nothing to fear. If you look at a country like Germany, for example, they've had a system of rent controls in place for decades, and they have an even bigger private rented sector in terms of the proportion of the housing stock than Scotland does. It's the abusive and exploitative landlords who have reason to worry. Decent, responsible landlords and their tenants do not.
But these reassurances are doing little to put landlords' minds at ease.
What we're hearing from our members is that many of them are planning to exit the sector. They're just feeling they no longer want to be a landlord here in Scotland, and they're taking the opportunity when the tenant gives notice to put their property in the market and sell it.
With the possibility of the rental pool shrinking even further, councils are looking at measures to increase the number of properties available. With 40,000 homes vacant across the country, the Empty Homes Partnership say these could be key to plugging the letting gap.
Bringing more homes back into use, you're bringing more supply back into use. Now, you have to be careful in saying this is the magic answer to everything. It's not, it's part of the solution to the housing supply challenges that we have. We need more social affordable homes, but we also need to think about what do we already have, what existing assets do we have that we can bring back into use to help Scotland's housing emergency.
Government and local authorities say they're considering all solutions, but in the meantime, hundreds, if not thousands of people are struggling to find a place to call home.
It's the Wild West right now. You can just buy any flat and let it out for whatever you want in whatever way you want, and it just shouldn't be the case. If being a landlord is your job, you should have a duty of care.
Forcing people to bid on their livelihood and where they live is an unacceptable. It's like asking people to bid on water. You need it. It's just not acceptable.
A lot of us are trying to cut back on unnecessary expenditures or try to take on extra shifts to earn more money to cover all the other costs that are going up. But housing isn't a luxury. We've got to live somewhere.
Well, to discuss the state of the rental market,